Hey, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, my name's Christina Kent and I'm an artist based out of San Francisco. And today I wanted to talk about some simple techniques and tools that you can use to loosen up your oil painting. And when I talk about painting looser or painting in a loose style, what I mean is painting in a style that has a freshness to it and energy, where there's a lot of strength and sort of definitive marks that are being made on the canvas without getting too wrapped up in all the small details. I love painting in this style, but it wasn't always something that was natural to me. I actually started out when I was younger. I tried doing a lot of drawing and painting in a photorealistic style, and I would spend so many hours, just hours and hours on a painting, trying to get every last detail right, trying to make my painting look just as crisp and clear as a photo. And the result was that my paintings, they looked technically impressive, but they almost had kind of a lifelessness to them. And I also did not always enjoy painting them. When I got back into painting after taking a long break, I was kind of looking for another way. And that's when I found this loose painting style. I heard about this style through the book Daily Painting by Carol Marin, and I also heard about it from teachers like the painter Sarah Sedgwick. And once I was exposed to this painting style, I just fell in love. So in this video, I wanted to share some of my favorite loose painting tips with you while I demo a quick warm-up or little painting exercise in my studio. Okay, so let's get to the tips. So if you're like me and you feel like your painting is too tight, you get too lost in all the details, and you want to bring this freshness, this life back into your work, then what do? My first tip is to start painting small. When I was in high school and I started painting, I worked on canvases that were around like 2 feet by 2 feet or kind of around that size. And I just kind of defaulted to that size because that seemed like the size that everyone else was painting. But the problem is when you work on a really large canvas, there's a lot of room for you to start getting into all of the tiniest details, and you can sort of lose track of the bigger picture because you're just so focused on rendering those details. So by making your canvas really small, like in the case of this demo, I'm working on a 6" by 6" panel, it's a lot easier for you to get a better sense of the big picture of what you're working on and not lose track of that. And as I was transitioning from doing photorealistic painting to painting in this looser style, I probably painted hundreds of these 6" by 6" panels, and it's still something that I return to on a regular basis, whether it's for a small study in the studio or whether it's for plein air painting. I love working on these small panels because it really forces me to focus on the big picture and be clear on the overall shapes that I'm painting. So that's my first tip. If you want to paint looser, start small. My second tip, if you want to loosen up your painting, is to use a relatively large brush. So for this painting, I'm working on a 6" by 6" panel, and my brush is a number 8 Princeton Summit Series synthetic brush, which back in the day when I was doing photorealistic paintings, I would use a much smaller brush for a much bigger canvas. Why? Because I wanted to get into every single little detail and render even all of the hairs on someone's head or something like that. So and so if you want to loosen up your painting, go in the other direction. Use a brush that feels too large for the canvas that you're working on. Why? Because if your brush feels too large for the canvas, it is going to force you to simplify it. You won't be able to render all of those minute details that you might want to make. You're going to have to find ways to simplify shapes, to lump them together, and to express things with just one large brushstroke rather than a bunch of small brushstrokes. It just encourages you to be bold and make more definitive marks. So that's my second big tip if you want to loosen up your painting. Use a relatively large brush. My third big tip if you want to paint looser is to set a time limit. When I was painting my photorealistic paintings, I would have no time limit and I would just spend hours and hours and hours rendering all of the smallest details on those paintings. And if you don't set a time limit for yourself, it's really easy to fall into that trap of starting to render all the small details. But if you know you are working against a time limit, and if it's a really short time limit too, then it forces you to make decisions. It forces you to find some clarity and to decide, okay, what are the details in this image that are really important that I have to articulate, and what are things that I can leave out? It also can prevent you from fiddling with your brush strokes. Like, have you ever put a brush stroke down and it looks really nice and beautiful, but then you think, well, maybe I just need to change this one thing, and you end up fiddling with it and you just kind of destroy the whole life of the brush stroke? Well, if you don't have that much time, if you know you're running against the clock, then I find, at least in my experience, I don't go back and fiddle with a lot of the brush strokes that I put down. And this helps maintain this freshness, this looseness to the brush strokes in my painting. And there's no strict formula on how to set the time limit. The important part is that you do have a time limit and that it feels challenging for you. So when I got back into painting and I wanted to paint in this loose style, I would set a time limit of 1 to 2 hours to do a 6" by 6" still life painting. And it was challenging for me, but it was also enough time where I felt like I could still, it wasn't so challenging that, it was overwhelming. So that's my third tip for painting looser. Set a time limit that feels like a challenge for you. And my final tip is a lot of practice. If you're like me, you're not going to be able to make these beautiful loose paintings overnight. It really comes with applying these techniques, applying these practices again and again and again to learn this new way of painting and mark making. With practice, your brushstrokes will become more confident and you'll feel more comfortable painting in a loose style. So that's my final tip. Practice this exercise again and again and you'll be sure to see results. Anyway, that's all I have for today. I hope you liked this video and I hope you found these tips really helpful. Let me know if you've applied them in your own painting practice or if there's other exercises or things you like to do to loosen up your painting. And as always, a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for making these videos happen. If you like my art, if you like my videos, and you want to help me make more, check out my Patreon at the link. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.